Angels, Airships and Aliens, the 3,500-year history of UFO sightings September 26, 2019. Matt Blitz wrote the article below this week for the website of the popular magazine Popular Mechanics, talking about how UFOs have been part of human history, and not just recently. Angels, Airships and Aliens, the 3,500-year history of UFO sightings. UFOs are not new. In fact, they follow humanity throughout our history. The U.S. government has finally admitted that UFOs are real more or less. Last week, the U.S. Navy confirmed that several videos, two of which were released by the New York Times in 2017, representing the so-called unidentified air phenomena UAP are authentic. The three videos, another was later published by the Washington Post, each depicting fast-moving oblong-shaped objects, were filmed by Navy pilots during training exercises in 2004 and 2015. The Navy has not yet identified the objects in the video and, along with the Department of Defense, said the video should never have been published. In Portuguese would be FANI. Although a UAP may be an unfamiliar term, this is the point. UAPs are essentially the new UFO, but with much less historical baggage. A Navy spokesman told the Washington Post that the acronym UFO/UFO carries so much stigma that it discourages anyone from reporting a sighting. This term is so loaded right now that you will never change people's understanding of what it means, said journalist Leslie Kean, who co-wrote the 2017 New York Times investigation into the Pentagon's UFO program. To Popular Mechanics, all you can do is adopt a new term. But humans have not begun to see UFOs flying above our heads in recent weeks or in 2015, 2004, 1947 or even 1639. Humans have seen and found unidentified flying objects for millennia. Biblical beginnings. 3,500-year history of UFO sightings. Jacob fighting the angel by Gustave Doré, 1885. Wikimedia Commons. Unidentified flying objects have been recorded throughout the history of mankind. The only thing that has changed is the way people, over thousands of years, have interpreted these unexplained events. Catholicism, Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism and all major religions really have images and tales about the aerial phenomena, said Diana Walsh Pasoka, author of the American Cosmic Book, UFOs, Religion, Technology, and professor of philosophy and UNC Religion. Wilmington told the Popular Mechanics some of them were comets, asteroids, meteors, and other atmospheric optical phenomena that were scientifically unknown to our ancestors, but others still defy modern explanations. Pasoka explains in almost all religions, there are contact events where an important figure makes contact with a heavenly figure. Moses and the burning bush, Muhammad and the angel Gabriel, and the Virgin Mary's own angelic visit. When religion is a lens to explain the universe, unexplicable phenomena may become religion. This is the first human contact with something they interpret as non-human or from this planet. And if they are not from this planet, they are indeed extraterrestrial. Pasoka says the Torah tale of Jacob's struggle with an angel is a good example of an encounter with an aerial phenomenon that has turned into a religious narrative. When you go back to the original source and read it in its original language, it doesn't look like the representation of artists in Western history, says Pasoka. It looks like he's fighting some sort of outer space being. Pasoka is not saying that a biblical figure struggled with an alien and turned into a religious text, but that the vision of a figure descending from heaven could have come from a shared human experience or observation. When religion is a lens for explaining the universe, inexplicable phenomena can become religion. The Age of Airships. Getty Images. In this 2010 book, Wonders in the Sky, Unexplained Aerial Objects from Antiquity to Modern Times. French Wonders from Ancient to Modern Times. French engineer and astronomer Jacques Vall analyzes 500 historical accounts of sightings of aerial phenomena. The first sighting of the book, which dates back nearly 3,500 years in modern Sudan, is from a Gebel Barkal steely granite slab that tells the story of how a similar shooting star had never happened before struck the defeating Nubians. To the Egyptian overcomers, it was viewed as a miracle and spiritual intervention. 3,500-year history of UFO sightings. Mysterious airship illustrated at the Call of San Francisco in 1896. Wikimedia Commons. These mysterious sightings. Human history throughout Valley's book, culminating in a phenomenon in Dubuque, Iowa, in 1879. It is a large and inexplicable airship that was visible for an hour in the city before disappearing on the horizon. Pasoka says that in the late 19th century, humans began to shift their interpretation of the unknown from one religious to a technological structure. Throughout the 19th and early 20th centuries, what was happening on Earth was seeping into the way we interpreted what we saw in the sky. In 1896 and 1897, mysterious aircraft were again seen throughout the U.S., with many witnesses even signing testimonials. Even Thomas Edison commented, saying, "You can take it from me that it's a pure scam. I have no doubt that aircraft will be successfully built in the near future, but it is absolutely impossible to imagine that a man could build a successful aircraft and keep it a secret." By the end of the 19th century, hydrogen-filled airships were under development, and a few years later, in 1900, the first Zeppelin would make his first trip. Whatever the aerial phenomenon that people in 1897 were seeing, it seemed quite a modern technological marvel of the day. And that's how it became the UFO. John Bettman. Getty Images. In November 1944, at the end of World War II, American fighter pilots began to observe bright orange lights. A few weeks later, a pilot saw a red, wingless, cigar-shaped object. The pilots named these Foo Fighters after a meaningless phrase used in a popular firefighter cartoon, and yes, the band was named after this incident. The media knew the story and the theories were not far behind. Could these objects be optical illusions or a hallucination of battle fatigue? Or could these aerial phenomena be super-secret Nazi weapons? The last theory was what caught the attention of the public. After all, the pilots were flying in the Axis territory, and many rumors surrounded the Germans' taste for strange scientific projects, such as a Nazi lunar base, for example. In the end, it was never established exactly what these Foo Fighters were, and a 1953 panel would eventually conclude that it was probably an electrostatic or electromagnetic phenomena. Kenneth Arnold, in the middle, and two other pilots examine a UFO photo. Bettman. Getty Images. But June 24, 1947 would change everything. While searching for a Marine Corps C-46 transport plane, seasoned pilot Kenneth Arnold deviated from his original trajectory to help search the southwest slope of Mount Rainier. During the search, Arnold spotted 9 peculiar-looking and possibly completely round objects flying in a formation that reminded him of geese. It was later estimated that they were flying beyond 1,600 kilometers per hour. When he reported them, and assuming they were a new type of experimental military jet or aircraft, the Army Air Corps dismissed the event as a mirage or hallucination. Within days, others supported Arnold, saying they saw a similar air phenomena. Arnold, disturbed that the military had dismissed his report, conducted interviews with the local press. When he described to reporter Bill Bickett of the Eastern Oregon newspaper what he saw as a disc, Bickett called them flying saucers the first time the term was used. A few years later, the term UFO was coined by the Air Force, prominently used in the 1953 Robertson panel report, the same panel that dismissed the Foo Fighters. The acronym was purposeful for its lack of clarity. Unidentified flying objects. Unidentified flying objects equal UFOs. It was hopeless that the Russians had something like this. T was meant to mean something unidentified. Period. Ace Keen. ND. It's a pretty reasonable term to use. It can mean anything. The first assumption by the U.S. military and public of what Arnold and others saw was that it was the Soviets. The Cold War was heating up fast in 1953, and atomic bomb tests, secret military exercises, and weapons accumulation were all possibilities. There was a whole question about whether they were Russians, but they ruled it out very early because of the extreme sophistication of the technology, says Keen, who along with reports for the New York Times is the author of the book UFOs, Generals, Pilots, and Government Officials Go on the Record. It was unimaginable that the Russians could have something like that. An extraterrestrial threat. Lubbock lights were an aerial phenomenon above Lubbock, Texas. An episode of the UFO craze that dominated the U.S. in the early 1950s. Bettman. Getty Images. In response to these late 1940s sightings, the Air Force set up a secret project called a name sign to investigate these incidents. But the more the Air Force researched, the more perplexed they became. There are so many documents that show at the highest levels that the U.S. military didn't know what they were, says Keen. According to her book, there was a division between those who thought there was a more conventional answer, such as a mirage, natural phenomena, inaccuracy or secret military technology, to those who believed that these aerial phenomena were not of this planet. A series of sightings in July 1952, including Washington, D.C., led to the broader admission that the U.S. government and military would cause some sort of air phenomenon to hover in U.S. airspace. With the project now called the Blue Book, The FBI was briefed by the office of Major General John Sanford, Director of Air Force Intelligence. Some military officials consider the possibility of planetary ships serious. As Keen's book describes, a U.S. military department told the Federal Bureau of Investigation (FBI) that it was not entirely impossible that sighted objects could be ships from another planet like Mars. Other FBI memos stated that some military authorities are seriously considering the possibility of planetary ships. The real concern, no matter if they were Russian or extraterrestrial, was whether it was a threat to national security. On July 29, 1952, Major General Sanford held a press conference in which he stated that they had examined nearly 2,000 reports and were able to respond adequately to most of them. But they were still analyzing the few relatively incredible things they could not explain. However, they managed to come to a conclusion about these sightings, and it was that it contains no pattern of purpose or consistency that we can relate to any conceivable threat to the United States. Think they never believed it was not a threat to national security. They just didn't know what else to do at that moment. Ace Keen had. Are they going to say to people? They just won't say, well, there are things flying in our sky that demonstrate the technology we can't explain. This is not something you want to announce to the public. The mystery goes on. 3,500-year history of UFO sightings. Joshua Roberts. Getty Images. When the Robertson panel presented its report in early 1953, he presented two conclusions on how to best handle these public-related sightings, training them to properly identify the natural phenomenon: meteors, mirages, noctilucent clouds and man-made objects, weather balloons, reflective aircraft and demystification. And that is exactly what federal authorities have done for over 6 decades. In all sightings, incidents, reports, unexplained occurrences, from Roswell to Area 51 and O'Hare Airport sightings in 2006, the U.S. government and military unmasked or, as often, remained silent. But recent events suggest a new strategy underway. What made the December 16, 2017 New York Times article so shocking was not the fact that it registered several very credible sources saying that the government had recently investigated UFOs. This could probably be presumed based on the history of the armed forces of the 1940s and 1950s. This is what they have potentially discovered and found since then. At that time, Elizondo said the program had investigated several UAPs, including those that the U.S. Navy confirmed as authentic. The program also studied the physical effects of encounters with objects, the technology that could in theory do what they said they observed, and the possible threat it posed to national security. But the most striking detail is one that is a bit buried. The program has recovered materials from these UAP/UFOs. Keen says he believes a lot happens behind the scenes. She thinks research is being done on these recovered materials to understand what they are, alluding to the fact that the U.S. may not be the only country in possession of these materials, that there is a secret global race associated with them. From what they tell me, it's a competitive thing. Those who understand technology first will have a real advantage. Ace Keen. My feeling is that there is a current undercurrent of competition between Russia, China and the U.S. Sources also told her that the physics of how these objects move has been theoretically solved. What they found is very futuristic. It would be a very difficult thing to replicate, but they can understand how it is done. Scientists and medical experts are also trying to understand the biological effects of those humans who approached these phenomena. Keen thinks the government is changing the way it deals with these reports of air phenomena. In this age of YouTube and mobile cameras, it is becoming more common to see these types of videos. After all, more than 2/3 of Americans believe the U.S. government knows more about UFOs than it is telling the public. Keen is convinced that there are unexplained air phenomena, but not convinced that it is extraterrestrial. It's a valid hypothesis, but I don't think for a moment we know what it is yet. Other hypotheses and speculations out there include interdimensions, time travelers, or super-secret weapons or aircraft developed by another nation on this planet. Even after decades of research, it is still unknown. What was once a mystery in ancient times remains a mystery today. In the end, Keen can only be sure of one thing: you're stuck with something you can't explain.